Hi there, my name is Kira and today I'm going to show you the kind of journey of me crocheting this giant bass. It is a little over 4 feet long and it weighs 13.2 pounds. So I thought it might be fun to just kind of take you through the process of me making this. I'm going to show you how I did some of this stuff and I hope you guys enjoy coming along for this journey. So it did take me a total of 5 days to crochet this bass. The first day, the only thing I was really wanting to get done was the mouth, because this was going to be kind of like a base for the entire project. The size of the mouth was going to determine how big the fish ended up being. And I've never made a project this big before, so I wasn't sure how big to make it or how to scale it, but I kind of just went in and got started, made a big circle, and then once I was happy with the size of the circle, I just made it a lot taller. And I was actually really happy with how this turned out, just since I'd freehanded it. It did take a full 2 skeins of yarn to make the mouth, and this is what it looked like when I was all finished on day 1. For day 2, I finally got started on the actual fish's head, and I got some yarn in the mail, so I ended up ordering 12 skeins of the green yarn to use for the body and the head. I knew that that was probably a little bit too much, but I only ended up using 6 skeins, so I'll probably have to make another project with the leftover yarn that I have. And on the bass's head, this part was really tricky because, like I said, I've just kind of been freehanding this pattern up to this point, and I could not get it to look how I wanted to. It's also kind of hard to tell without stuffing, just if it was going to end up looking right. So after lots and lots of trial and error, I decided to actually sit down and write out the pattern. And to do this, I just kind of took my original baby bass pattern and tried to make it 3 times the size. And then once I had that all worked out and written down, it made things go a lot easier. But I was definitely still nervous because, like I said, it was really hard to tell without having stuffing in it, just if it was going to end up looking good at the end. It also ended up getting so big at the top of the head that I was having to crochet it while setting it on my little ottoman because I couldn't even hold it on my lap anymore. So this is kind of what it looked like on the end of day 2. You can kind of see where I'm going with it, but it definitely still needs some work. For day 3, my goal for day 3 was to get done the fins, and in my baby bass pattern, I actually crocheted the fins into the body so that you didn't have to sew them on at the end. With this pattern, I made the fins, and that also took some trial and error. But once I had them how I liked, I laid it out on the floor with the bass, and I was gonna mark them and crochet them into the body, but I just was not feeling confident enough about the fins being in the right place, and I was worried they would come out crooked. So I decided to just wait and sew them on once I had the whole body done. And also on day 3, I wanted to get through the rest of the head and start working on the fish's body. So this was again another part where I kind of just made my baby bass pattern 3 times as big. I added a few extra rows here and there just to make it more proportionate. I was definitely starting to feel a little bit more confident at this point. And of course, my kitties had to help. You'll see throughout this video, they are all over this. They absolutely love playing with the yarn. They're always so curious as to what I'm doing. So yes, the rest of this day was just a lot of crocheting around and around and around. And then here is what it was looking like on the end of day 3. I know it's still kind of hard here to see the vision of where I was going with it, but I promise it does come together. I also on day 3 worked on starting the eyes. So for the eyes, I ordered a pair of 60mm safety eyes off of Etsy, and when they came in the mail, they were super cute, but they just were not going to be big enough to be proportionate for this fish. So I somehow came up with the idea to take these fillable plastic Christmas ornaments and paint the inside of them to make them black, and so that way they'd still be black and shiny like a normal safety eye is, but they're much bigger. So these are 80mm, and I just used some black acrylic paint to paint the inside, and then once that dried, I don't have a clip of this, but I used a nail and some pliers, and I held the nail into a candle to heat it up, and then just used that to poke a hole on the other side of the ornament, so there was 2 holes for me to thread some yarn through. And then later on I used that yarn to tie the eyes onto the face, which I'll show you. But this actually worked really well. So, I mean, if you ever need safety eyes that are absolutely huge, I totally would recommend this technique. For day 4, I wanted to get the whole thing stuffed, and I was really nervous about this because I only had a 5-pound box of stuffing, and just looking at the box, I was certainly this is going to be enough. But I was only halfway through stuffing the fish when I ran out of stuffing, so I did end up having to go buy another 5-pound box. And honestly, I probably even could have used more. but the 10 pounds did end up being enough. So with the stuffing, I was having trouble because the top of the head is so much bigger than the rest of the body, and I just could not get the stuffing to sit right. But eventually I did figure it out. After I had most of it stuffed, I needed to like finish making the body and then close it up. And this was so exciting because I could finally actually start to picture what this was going to look like once I had all the details on and stuff. Also, it's absolutely huge. You can see it. I'm like struggling to carry it. And just look how cute they are together. Oh my gosh. And then the last day here is day 5. And for day 5, all I had left to do was add a bunch of the final details. So like the tail and the fins and the eyes and stuff like that. And I started with the tail. This process went pretty smooth, but after I finished the tail, it was very floppy. Like I could not get it to stick up straight, which just did not look very good. So I decided to grab some wire and just crochet around the outside of the tail over some wire, and that way it gave it a little bit more structure. This worked really well, but I think if I were to make it again, I would crochet over a much thinner piece of wire throughout the entire tail, and that way it might be a little bit safer if there's like kids that are going to be around it and things like that. I also had a whole bunch of yarn tails to tuck in, which honestly is my favorite part of projects like this because it's so satisfying to see it all cleaned up at the end. And then I went ahead and sewed on the fins, and at first I was a little bit worried that they were going to be too small, but the fins on my baby fish are very small as well, so I think it worked out really good. And then to make the lips, I ended up getting this huge ball of Bernat blanket yarn, which is like the thickest yarn I could find. And I honestly probably should have gotten a bigger hook for this, but I didn't. I made it work with the 10mm hook. And this was pretty easy, just kind of crocheting all around the open part of the mouth to add those lips, which makes such a difference in the way that the mouth looks. I also started working on the back fin. This was super easy, but I had to keep going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth from side to side because the fish was so big I couldn't turn it every time I was crocheting a new row. And then the last and final step to this pattern was adding the eyes, which, like I said, I really love how these turn out. And I'm going to show you just how I attach them if any of you do decide to make this with my pattern. I just used a scrap piece of medium weight yarn and thread that through both of the little holes that are on the eye. And then I tied that around some of the stitches on the fish and just tucked in those ends. And it feels very secure on there. I seriously think this is like such a great method if you need really big safety eyes. And then, like with all my patterns, I did try to do some face shaping on this, but it was seriously so big that me pulling the yarn together to tie it, it kept breaking off. So I ended up not doing any sort of face shaping. And then, of course, I added that little pop of white around the eye, which I love so much. And that was the last step of this basque before it was all finished. This thing is actually huge. It's adorable. I have no idea what to do with it now that I have it. I've thought about selling it, but I have no idea how much I would charge for something like this. And I guess it did take me 5 days and lots of supplies, so I don't think anyone would be willing to buy it for what it's worth. Originally, when I first started making this, my plan was to use the basque as like a body pillow. Like I could just have it on my bed and use it as a pillow, but it's honestly way too big. Like the head is way too tall for me to even be able to hug it. You can see I can like barely wrap my arms around it. If anyone has suggestions on what I should make next with that 6 skeins of yarn that I have left over, please feel free to drop them down below. I was thinking maybe one of my little alligators. I could make a big version of my alligator, but I don't know. Yeah, you guys let me know what you think down below. And thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed seeing the process of me making this big basque, and I'll see you again soon.